This is the Academic Survival Podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Chandra McDonald. Statistics show that approximately 40% of students drop out of college every year. In fact, nearly 30% drop out their first year. Well, I am on a mission to improve these stats.
Yes, 100%. Like like I said earlier, I understand the concern, but I think if you take the stance of these tools are inherently bad for learning and development, to your point, you're going to stunt the student's ability to compete in the workforce of tomorrow. And so, and as an institution, we are judged based on the successful outcomes that we can help our students generate. And so educating them like this is 1980 is not going to serve them well, right? It's not going to serve them well.
That is Dr. Amber Artiaga, the VP of Student Support at Campus. Campus is an online community college that focuses on making quality education accessible to students from all walks of life. On this episode of Academic Survival, we take a deep dive into the world of online learning and the integration of artificial intelligence into higher education. Welcome to the Academic Survival Podcast. Today I have with me Dr. Amber Artiaga, and she is the Vice President of Student Support at Campus. And so many of you may not have heard about Campus, so Amber's going to tell us a little bit about that school, and she's going to tell us about her role there, and we're going to get into all things about online students. So welcome, Amber, Dr. Amber Artiaga. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. I'm excited to be here. I've been looking forward to chatting with you.
Yay. So let's jump right on in. So you're the Vice President of Student Support at Campus. Tell us about Campus and your role there.
Yeah, so Campus is an online community college, and our focus is on ensuring that students, no matter where they are in the United States, where they are economically, that they have access to high quality education. That's paramount in our mission. And so our goal is to pair instructors and professors for some of our top tier institutions in the country and be able to bring them into an environment that is more affordable for students, and one that allows for them to be able to connect with professors on a smaller class sizes and a more intimate environment where they're able to not only build connections, of course, with the instructors, but other people that are literally all across the U.S. And creating these dynamic kind of experiences that otherwise there may be larger barriers to entry in order to be able to access and be able to learn from some of these top tier professors. So that is our mission, and we're excited to be able to bring in really talented professors and instructors into our environments. And so my role as the VP of Student Support is basically all things student life cycle. So once a student completes their enrollment, completes their admissions requirements, making sure that their onboarding experience and they understand what they just signed up for and they know where all the resources are, right? Also making sure that we're connecting them with their support coach. Each student gets their personalized support coach that is responsible for basically kind of partnering with them and walking with them through their learning journey while they're here at campus. And so kind of overseeing and resourcing the support coaches so that they can resource their students. So basically all things student experience, I oversee community building, all that good stuff to make sure that although being online, they may be in a room by themselves, but they shouldn't feel by themselves. And so really creating community around them is what I oversee at campus.
So you talked about the student life cycle. So if I'm a student and I'm just now enrolling in the program, like what does that process look like for me?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what happens is you obviously have an admissions counselor, and their role is to kind of walk you through the admissions process. Also, it's just to make sure that the campus is the right fit for you, right? We want to make sure that we have students that not only are you clear on what your expectations are in terms of the outcomes that you're going to get as becoming a campus student, or we call them campus scholars. We want to also make sure that the program that we have is a fit for them. So we have associate's degree in business administration. A number of our students come to us because that's a broad enough degree where you can go in multiple different fields, and it's almost like any field, there is some component of business in it, whether it's healthcare, whether it's government service, whether it's fashion or it's more creative fields, there's always this element of business. And so coming in and having that background allows our students to go to a number of different career trajectories. And so the admissions counselor kind of walks them through that process, finds out what their goals are, wanting to make sure that we have a good match. And then once a student actually enrolls, then we walk them through an onboarding process, which includes a live orientation. And during that orientation, we call it O Week. And so during O Week, we walk students through the opportunity to understand what the platform is all about, right? So that's really important in the online environment to make sure they understand how everything functions. We also connect them with...
Quick question. By live, do you mean live but not in person, right?
Yes,
okay,
live but not in person.
Okay, got it.
So students go through a live orientation. Obviously, everything's virtual, so that's going to be via CampusWire, which is our platform that all of our courses and all of our extracurricular activities are housed on. And so during orientation, they get an opportunity to connect with one another. They get an opportunity to connect with their faculty members so they know who they're going to be learning from and learning with. We also do some kind of fun activities, because what we find is, what I've found, I've been working with online students for a long time, and it takes a lot of courage to step into a brand new environment and not 100% sure if this is something that's, going to work for you, and not sure exactly how all of this works. And so we want to make sure that while we're trying to provide them with the information they need to be successful academically and how everything functions, we also want to make sure that they know that, we recognize that you're a person. And so your instructors are also people. And so meeting them in a less, what is the word I'm looking for? Kind of in a less tense environment, I'll say it that way, in terms of just meeting them for the first time in the classroom. I think it gives the instructors an opportunity to really share their heart with them, a little bit about why they teach and what they're, how they're there to support students in a less rigorous environment. And then doing that, I think during that orientation, they really, the students do start to create just understanding our culture a little bit more, knowing that we're there to support them, and we are there to ensure that what they came for, they get, right? That's at the end of the day, if I really boil down what I do, what my team does is, when I say student experience, it's they came here for a specific thing. And our goal is to make sure that we walk alongside and coach them and resource them, so that they can get to that end goal of getting that degree, and then ultimately getting into that career, right? Because the degree is the entry point, but it's the actual career is the thing that they're really actually coming to us for. So ensuring that they're resourced in that way. So the orientation is part of that. And then once students complete that orientation week, so there's a number of different events that go on. We have a game night. Again, this is all virtual, so we use Kahoots for that. Really, it's about kind of just really honestly indoctrinating them into our community. And so once that's completed, generally speaking, we might have a day or two between the time the class actually starts and then their first night of class. They'll actually start, of course, with their instructor. They'll meet all the other folks in their classes, and then they're off to the races. And so we also have, I mentioned earlier that we do have support coaches whose responsibility it is just kind of walk alongside and resource students as they're going through the program. And so they'll be doing check-ins with the student during those first initial weeks as well, just to make sure that they have what they need. Because sometimes when you go through a learning experience where it's okay, we went through this orientation, this totally makes sense, I get this. And then they get into the platform and it's wait, what? Where does this work? I spent a whole week understanding this, and now I'm confused. And so we don't want to take for granted. The adult mind is they say that after about 20 minutes, it starts to wander. So we don't want to take for granted that our students know. So we're constantly, especially as we're onboarding them and those initial weeks because they're having to set new habits. And so part of that is ensuring that they get into the habit of, when I don't know something, I need to reach out for help. And so for a lot of our students, they may not have support systems like that. So there is no one to reach out to help for. So it doesn't come naturally to them. So by having the support coaches reach out pretty regularly at that beginning stage to start setting the tone for what resources that they can provide and things like that, that's really important. And then, like I said, that relationship is ongoing. So the coach stays with them throughout their entire student experience. And what's important about that, I think, is it really allows for the coach to really understand their story. So and be able to really offer the type of care that's going to be meaningful to that student, because you can't do every student's different. So what you do for one student is not going to work for another. And so the fact that they're able to stay with them for the entire journey allows them to kind of know their story, know what they've gone through in the past, and understand how they've accomplished and overcome obstacles in the past, and remind students how they've done that. So really having that rapport, that close relationship is super important. So that's kind of the kind of high level of what happens when a student comes in, and kind of afterwards what that continuity of care looks like. That care system is really, really important, especially for online students. So that's something that we're really always fine tuning, right? Because each cohort has its own personality, I feel like. And so there will be times where this worked with this cohort, and the next cohort, these particular things are not working anymore. So it's always iterating, always being adaptable to what the needs of the students are.
Yeah, that's a lot there. And so there's so many topics that I was going to have some questions, and you answered answered them already, which is completely fine. But I do want to circle back and at least touch on a couple of things. So one of my questions was going to be about, is it a traditional semester, or are they cohorts? How do students what does the cycle look like? Do they matriculate with the same group of people all the way through? Mm-hmm. Or is it, they pick their own classes and create their own journey, but it still has the same finish line?
So we like to kind of take a lot of the guesswork out of the student experience. I don't know about you, but I remember being in an undergrad student, and they gave me a big catalog. At that time, goodness, they gave me a big old catalog with a zillion classes in it and said, here's your degree program. Here are all the classes. Now go register for them, right? At that time, you couldn't even register online. It was you had to call in on the line and see if the class was open. And so I didn't know what I was doing. I'm picking, especially as first year student, I was picking classes that seemed fun. Just out of my mind, I just had no clue. And so we do build the schedule for them. So that way there's no guesswork. Because what I will say is, the majority of our students have competing demands on their time, on their resources. And so we want to remove as much friction out of the learning experience as we can, right? And so the way that we do that in part is that we will build the schedule for the students. So they don't have to wonder, is this class going to count? I cannot tell you how many classes I've taken, and I won't. That didn't count for anything. Again, because I didn't know what I was doing. So I just the wasted time is just insane. So anyway, so we will set up the course schedule for them. So when they come in, they know what, so generally students will take 3 classes at a time. We're on a quarter system, so the time goes quickly. And so students will come in, they'll take their 3 classes. And so generally speaking, the cohorts all stay with each other. Now we recognize that students, especially adult students, life happens, right? The issues of life will hit, and sometimes they'll may need to take a little bit of time off or things like that. And so we have resources for that, to where if life hits them, we can still work with them and they can still progress in their programs. So that could mean for every once in a while, somebody may fall out of a cohort, but then they join the one behind them. But the goal is that you kind of move through this experience together. And so not only do you have your support coach that knows your story, knows your background, is familiar with what your goals are and helping you stay focused on those, but you also have the same group of people for the most part that you're getting to go through this experience with. And that also creates that additional sense of belonging, community engagement, which is critical in my mind in the online learning environment.
Wow. It sounds like campus has taken the model from what works well on at like traditional campuses. There's certain things that work well, and
Yeah.
it seems like they've taken a piece. So, for example, because I entered college through the EOP program, which is basically like first generation or low income. So I had additional resources. So I had a counselor that was with me along the way. Like I didn't have to figure out what classes to take. It was like, here, you will take. Like I knew what to choose from rather than having like a million page catalog. I was like, here's a sheet of paper. like you're going to choose, do this. Yeah. And so that's awesome that basically they're getting that individualized support. There's nothing like starting a new journey and knowing that you're not doing it alone.
Right. I think that's huge. I think that's huge. And like I said earlier, like it's just because the online students in general, and it's not unique to just campus students, but online students in general, they're online because chances are great the traditional environment is just not a fit for them. They can't, either geography wise, there's not a school close enough to them, or scheduling wise, it's just not feasible for them to be able to work a full time, take care of family, and go to school, a brick and mortar institution at the same time. And so we want to make sure that as we are creating these online spaces, that we're not just taking what happens in a class in a classroom and then just throwing it into like a Zoom. Like it's not, that doesn't translate. It doesn't translate. So we really have to be intentional. I think that's what we've done a really good job about, is being really intentional about what the experience looks like. And so being able to, as close as we can, bring the student into the room. And so the sessions are live. This is not a recording that they watch and then they go off and do their homework. These are live sessions where
so it's synchronous.
It's synchronous. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yes, it's synchronous. And so they're seeing their instructor, they're seeing the other students in the class are able to raise their hand and have that dialogue. And so I think, I don't know, like, I don't believe that all online experiences are created equal, right? Like, we're living in a day and time where education is really accessible, right? Like you go on YouTube and you can learn all the things that you want, right? Like you type it in and chances are great somebody has created a video around it. Now, is the video quality? Is it accurate? And does the person who's speaking care anything about you really understanding what they're talking about? Maybe not, right? And so when I say like not all experiences are created equal, it's that being able to have it synchronous where students are able to actually engage in real time with their peers, with the faculty member, where the faculty member could throw up a white screen and actually where you're feeling more like you're in a actual physical classroom, but to be able to do that from the comfort of your home and not have to drive however long away, pay for parking. I just like, I'm having flashback school experience. And I'm just like, man, so much energy was spent just trying to get, like you said earlier, button a seat just to get there. And now I'm already spent. And now I'm supposed to spend the next 2 hours trying to understand what you're saying. Like,
look, when part of the journey, when part of the campus experience, not the school, but like when part of the traditional campus experience includes praying for a parking spot,
yes,
so that you can get to class on time.
And you can get to class on time. And then I promise you, I'm having flashbacks as we speak of being all sweaty because I remember like we had an upper and a lower campus, and and all the student parking was on the lower campus. And most of my classes were upper classes and our upper campus. And so I'm like my big backpack with all the books in it and trying to get to class. And yeah, it was just, I think if you think back of all the energies that's exuded and the stress and the anxiety that creates, right before you get into a situation where you're supposed to learn, where you're supposed to think critically, where you're supposed to contribute to conversation, like does not make sense. So we take a lot of that out so they can come and really be fully present in this live experience where you're able to exchange ideas and thoughts and debate and all of that would typically happen in a classroom. They don't just because they're not physically in the same space together, they don't forego that learning and that experience.
That's good. That's good. Today, there's a lot of talk about AI in the educational space.
Yep.
And I just want to know, like, what are your thoughts on that? Particularly, like, do you see it being something that is frowned upon or smiled at? Like, what's been your experience, and then what are your thoughts? AI in education.
Like, that's such a loaded statement right now. Like, such a loaded statement. And depending on, it's like, everybody pick up your knives because now we're going to fight. Like, So tell me the pros and cons. I'll start with pros because I do 100% believe there's way more pros than there is cons. I think that what AI does, it allows some of the I think when we get into understanding thought, right? So talking about metacognition, thinking, how do you think about how you think, right? These are things that we don't normally do, right? Yeah. Because we are in a world where things are fed to us. Somebody posts a YouTube video, whether it's accurate or not, doesn't matter. People will repeat information that they hear because maybe the speaker was very eloquent in the way that they shared it, or maybe the speaker had great visuals, and so it seemed like it made sense. But do we really take the time to think, like, let me fact check this? Like, where did you get your data? I can't tell you how many times, like, I was listening to a podcast earlier today, and they were espousing some statistics, and I'm going, can I see the data? Can you put the data in the actual podcast somewhere so I can take a look? So what I think AI will help us to do, and at least I'm hopeful about, is that it will help us move more to a space of that metacognition space of let me really analyze how I'm acquiring information. Because again, we're in a space where information is rampant and prevalent. But the quality, how do you determine, how do you gauge, how do you filter for quality? And so I think AI is helpful in helping us to distill down, but I don't think it takes the place of us doing our own research, right? And so when AI first came out, it seemed like almost immediately there was a number of colleges that were like, we're banning it. And say, wait a minute. You don't know, all you heard was student, I think what it was is people are institutions and leaders thought this is how students are going to cheat. And then we're never going to fully know whether, the student's not going to be able to actually demonstrate their knowledge. And so, which is irrelevant. You shared, asked me about cons. That is a legitimate concern. Right. However, I do think if we look at it from a space of how can we work with it, the image that keeps coming to mind, and I've shared this with a couple of folks on my team, but it's just this is not the first time that we have had pivotal changes in the way that knowledge is gained. So when you think about when the internet first became widely used, people had concerns there's too much information out, nobody's going to know what's accurate, which I guess that's true, but there's always a concern around new tech. And so I think that rather than trying to, in the higher ed space, in upskilling space, rather than trying to figure out how to remove it from the environment, I think we figure out how to work with it. And so, for example, if you're concerned about, students are going to be using this information to use AI to plagiarize papers and things like that. They're going to forget how to critically think, and it's going to be a detriment to their critical thinking skills. I think, one way that you can work with AI in doing these things is encourage them to use it. There was I was at South by Southwest earlier this year, and so of course everybody's talking about AI. The two things that I heard quite frequently is is AI, everything around AI, and ecosystems. Those are our two main buzzwords. It seems like for 2022. Ecosystems and AI. Like, how many times do you say that? But
Right.
anyway, one of the sessions I went to, I really liked their approach. And forgive me, I don't remember the name of the university, but the way that they were using it was that the institution was actually asking students to use ChatGPT to complete the paper. And so that wasn't the assignment. That was like the baseline. You had to use ChatGPT. However, the assignment was, so they gave them a prompt. And so the assignment was find the holes. So ChatGPT created this document, and they're actually being great on their cognitive thinking. Like, yes, this information actually is good, but what's missing? What's not present here that the AI can't pick up, that the human mind, based on our own ability to be inquisitive and to research and fact find and all that, what is missing, right? And so I think if we take those types of approaches where it's like, how can we use this I kind of view it like as a second brain. How can we use this to surface up ideas that maybe we may not have on our own? It's like having a really smart friend that knows a lot of things, but maybe is not like, has a difficult time understanding context, right? Because it was never, right? It will never, like, they can surface up data in a conversational way, and that's good, but like, you still have to, I don't think it takes the place of us actually thinking. And so for my seat, I really see it as a positive. I think the conversation needs to be around how can we use it in a way that it helps the students that we are serving today be able to be not just functional, be excellent in the careers of the future that we have not even thought about, right? Because not only does this change education, it changes the types of careers that our students are going to be going for, in the future.
Yes, yes. So here's the thing. If you ban AI from education, from the educational space, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is the direction that we're going in the world. Are you now producing a student who is less competitive or less knowledgeable because you didn't give them the tools to even critically think about, like that piece you're talking about?
Yeah.
So it's like, you can't, part of education is preparing you for the part of getting that degree is to prepare you for the future. Yeah. So you better prepare them for a future that is going to exist rather than a future that that you want to look like the past.
Yeah. Yes, 100%. Like I like I said earlier, I understand the concern, but I think if you take the stance of these tools are inherently bad for learning and development, to your point, you're going to stunt the student's ability to compete in the workforce of tomorrow. And so, and as an institution, we are judged based on the successful outcomes that we can help our students generate. And so educating them like this is 1980. It's not going to serve them well, right? It's not going to serve them well, and it's a, I don't know. I think it's just it's a slap in the face for students who come to us with their hopes, their dreams, their desires, and in some cases, in a lot of cases, to be honest, maybe not 100% sure even on what they want to do. They know that education is the path to successful, career trajectory. What type of education, what they want to do with it, they may not know. And so part of the institution's role, I think, is also to provide some exposure, right? Like, so expose them to what's possible.
Yeah.
So that, because I think clarity comes from exposure. So those students who are maybe undecided when they enter, as they experience not just the learning, but experience different types of ways to to be able to earn income and career paths and things like that. That's when they start to gain that clarity. And I think as an institution and as people that are here to support and serve students, it's part of our responsibility to make sure that we expose them to the full breadth of what the world of work is going to be looking like when they're preparing to enter.
Yeah. And what's interesting also is like we have a tendency to have a bias for the technology that was on the scene when we got here, right? So I would imagine that at some point we're like, no, you can't use calculators. You got to do that math in your head. And then it's like, but no one is saying, oh, you shouldn't run auto correct or don't spell check your paper. Like, go look those words up in the dictionary and make sure they're spelled correctly. It's like, no, we expect that, we want you to run the, make sure you're do the spell check, right? But then also you have Grammarly, and which is, not necessarily forcing students to know grammar if something is automatically correcting it. But then again, you do have context, right? Because if you're solely relying on that technology, then you're gonna, sometimes the wrong there is there, right? sometimes it's like it's and it is not the same thing, and so you've got it turning it into a contraction when it's like. Yeah, that kind of thing. So you do have to have some knowledge to make sure that your technology is making you look like an idiot.
Some context. You still need to have some, critical thinking and things like that. And to your point, like I don't know how long Grammarly has been around, but it's been a minute. And so that's AI as well. You know what I mean? It's not like this is new. I think ChatGPT just took it to a whole different level, right? And that's where it's like, people
a
like
whole nother level.
People are get afraid of things that they don't understand. And so I think what we need to do is really like figure out how do we incorporate this learning, this second brain technology.
And the time saver of it all, because that's what technology has done is in the past. You don't have to go grab that dictionary and look it up. I'm talking about like older technology, right? You don't have to necessarily grab that dictionary and go look it up. You're going to use autocorrect, and then you're going to, right click and perhaps find the synonyms to make sure that you were using the word that you thought you were using. So it's making it quicker. So imagine now you produce this student who was not allowed to use ChatGPT, and now they're in the workforce and they're performing with people who maybe didn't get a degree, or maybe they did get a degree, but they were able to use it. And so now you're producing a project at work, and one person is light speeds ahead of you because they're using, as you called it, the second brain, or they're like, can I phone a friend? My friend is ChatGPT or some other kind of AI. It's got my best friend AI who's coming with me.
For those that don't embrace it, I do believe like you wind up creating this obsolescence in a brand new person who should be like equipped and ready to go. And like I said, like it is. This is not new. ChatGPT clearly is not the only AI tech out there. It's insane. Like the other thing that I think is like, gosh, I don't know if I would put this in a con or I guess it's maybe a little bit of both, but it's like there's new AI tech coming out, like literally it seems like every hour. And so like, being able to adjust to all of that, and like how can we work more efficiently, better? Especially here's another thing to kind of like this is the season that we are in terms of like this time in history. I think is just so interesting in that we have just come through a global pandemic. I heard earlier today apparently the pandemic is officially over. I don't know how they come up with that, but apparently they said from the government standpoint, the pandemic is officially over, right? And so we've gone through a really challenging, just emotionally challenging, mentally, physically, emotionally challenging season. And then we enter this space of hyper productivity where we actually do get the opportunity to, I think, to make up some ground for maybe some of the things that were lost during the pandemic, right? I think we get to some degree, collapse time in a way that allows us to maybe get those 2+ years back where productivity took a hit just because you're trying to, like, not only are you moving from working in an office to working at home and trying to juggle your children, but you're concerned about your own health, your family's health. Like, it's just this pressure cooker environment emotionally where you can't tell me that productivity didn't take a hit from that. And so I feel like with the rise of AI and allowing people to work more efficiently, to really, like I said, collapse time in a way that allows them to get more done in a shorter period of time without taxing them mentally. I think that's a win. So I don't know. That's kind of my stance on AI. I'm a big fan. I think ChatGPT is phenomenal. I think the AI, again, with guardrails. Like, I am a AI fan with a seatbelt. I'll say it that way. Like, don't jump out the window. Like, within reason. But I think, I think we partner with it. I don't think we just say, like, like, to your point, throw away all the calculators, do all the math in your head, and don't use Grammarly. Good luck to you. Like, it's like, I heard I can't remember, maybe it was another podcast as well, but like, they were saying how Gen X is like the only thing one of the things that to do to really stump, and hopefully this is not offensive to millennials, but like, to stump millennials is to put them in a stick shift and, what's the other thing? Put them in a stick shift and give them a Thomas guide and ask them to go. Good luck. I think that was what we had when we needed it. That was, I remember I had Thomas guides in my car. Like, I remember that. Like, you mapped your way and all of that. But to your earlier point about, like, some things they should be like obsolete to some degree. We don't need Thomas guides anymore. But what that does is it allows me to keep my eyes on a road as opposed to looking at a map. So overall, the safety is better. I can navigate.
Right.
If there's traffic jams in one way, I can go another way, and it's creating a more efficient travel experience. And so it is with AI. It's creating a more efficient thought generating experience, I think, for those who choose to use it.
Yeah. And I think then those are some pros. And so I guess maybe some cons would be going back to your Thomas Guide experience example, right? So I remember getting a Thomas Guide for my birthday, and I was just so excited. I was excited about my Thomas Guide. And let me tell you, I would open up the map and just look at all the streets and memorize, like, what street followed after that one and followed after that one. Like, I knew it. And so I guess from that standpoint, it's like, you could have dropped me off anywhere, and I knew where I was. If a street was closed, I knew where I was. Like, I knew how to navigate. And so, like, recently I had to go downtown for several days in a row. I had to go to downtown Los Angeles. I was actually serving on jury duty, and my navigation took me to a road that was closed. Like, that off ramp was closed. I'm like, oh. I'm like, why didn't you know this? Why didn't you know that this was closed? You're not supposed to send me to road closures. And so I had to get off at a different exit, and I was like, crap. Like, now fortunately, it was going to reroute me, right? Like, it was going to it knew where home base was. But for me, had I, still been old school, I would have known, like, what street I was going to go off next. And then I would have known how to navigate back. But again, I didn't need to. But I guess, like, the con is, like, it can sometimes be out of step with what is actually happening. And then take you to,
which is why you still need to critically think. It's like, you don't get to just, like, when I say second brain, I don't mean, like, the other one does nothing. I mean, like, you actually have to use it to, like, critically look at what's being told to you and base it off of because what AI doesn't it doesn't have context. And so that's where the human brain comes in. It's not, I mean, some people think it's sentient. I don't think it is. I don't think it has a soul. I don't think that's what's happening here. And so but you do. And so you need to bring that to the table and marry that with what's being told to you and look at it critically. And then you come up between the AI's brain, your brain, you come up with what I'll call third brain. That is the synthesis of those two, right? And so to your point around the traffic, you still need to be able to, you need to be able to navigate, you need to be able to know where you are in the world. And so that's the context that I think that the human mind, but you can't replace that.
Yeah, that's good. So in the education space, whether it be online or traditional, what do you see that is perhaps around the corner? What can we expect? What do you see the future, looking like in education, higher ed specifically?
Higher ed specifically, that's a really great question. Like I said, this is a really interesting time in history where we're on the precipice of having the very way we live, work, play could change significantly based on what we were just discussing around AI. And so I do think long term, I do think you will see more institutions embracing it. What that looks like, I don't know. But I do think that that's going to be more of an expectation, again, because the world of work is going to require it, right? And so we do have to, with guardrails or with a seatbelt, like I said, we do have to figure out what this looks like, where we're still able to have students demonstrate knowledge, but it may take a different form than what we have traditionally been used to, right? And so those traditional assessments and things like that may not work. And so we may have to think about what that looks like. How do you assess knowledge when knowledge in its, I'm going to say raw form, is ample and available? So how do you now determine what the student actually knows? So I think we will see more integration of AI technology. The other thing for my space around supporting students, not specific in the instruction piece, but in the I think our lane is more in the just kind of full 360 person view, right? Because it's these are students that are not just they don't just come and it's just academic and that's it. We see more need for mental health, right? And so a lot of more institutions are incorporating that into how they resource and how they serve students. We do that here at campus as well. Students have access to a mental health service. So when
That's
they
good.
need it, yeah, because again, we just came out of this pressure cooker environment of the pandemic. And so to then jump into an unknown space, unfamiliar space, that's going to create a level of maybe anxiety and a little of concern. And so we want to make sure that as we're serving students, just higher ed as a body, I think we do need to make sure that we're serving the whole student, because they can't detach them. We're not compartmentalized human beings. What happens outside the classroom is going to, in fact, is going to impact your performance in the classroom. So to pretend as though that is not the case, I think is naive. And so really starting to see more and more institutions lean into that mental health space of making sure that we're resourcing students and encouraging it. I think there was a period of time where there was a little bit more stigma. I think we have come a long way where that goes. In certain communities, I think there is still stigma, especially a number of minority communities, but I think we're starting to see that become more commonplace, that everybody needs a therapist. Everybody needs, to talk through some things. And so being able to see that a little bit more prevalent in the higher ed space, I think that's probably going to be the case. And the other thing too, and I think this is just, I think it's to some degree, this is baked into the overall college experience, whether it's on campus or online, but a much more focus around, that community building piece. How do we do that? effectively in a way that shows value to the student, right? Where we're not creating things just for the sake of creating them, but that the students are fully engaged in them. And that to me is both an art and a science. Like we know that students that tend to be, statistically speaking, students that tend to feel more connected to either an individual, so it could be instructor, it could be their advisor, it could be their support coach, what have you, or other peers, when life issues hit them, they tend to have a better chances of overcoming them because they feel not beholden, that's the wrong word. They feel that connection where somebody is counting on me, even if it's not like we're not in a group work, but somebody knows my story and they're rooting for me. And so I need to show up in this space. So a better emphasis, or more emphasis, I should say, on community building and what that means in an online space where students have competing demands on their time. So they need to be valuable. Like I said, like if somebody's working full time, they have children, like putting on certain types of events that they don't see as relevant. Like that's the other part. They can't just be events for events' sake. They need to be relevant to what it is that student needs in that season. And that's going to change as they matriculate through the programs. But I think that's another piece that you're going to see a little bit more. And I'll say the fourth thing would be, like I mentioned earlier, knowledge is everywhere, right? So you go on YouTube and you can see information, and you can get information and learn how to do a multitude of things. And so I think in this online space, really creating a little bit more dynamic experience in the online space. So just popping into a Zoom and showing a slideshow is not going to cut it, right? That's not going to be able to like keep your folks engaged, keep your students engaged in a way that you want them coming back for more. They're hungry for the knowledge. They're hungry for the experience, right? So more experience-based learning in that online space where it's a little bit more dynamic. You don't want to, like the YouTube video, like in my mind, the YouTube videos shouldn't outdo what's happening in the classroom. Like they should be engaging. They should be like engaging from a content standpoint, right? Challenging them, but visually as well. Like not just, again, the nobody wants to hop into a Zoom. Like when somebody pings you and says, we don't hop into a Zoom, nobody gets excited about that. But if it's a dynamic experience, and you feel like any experiences that create greater connection, I think that you'll maybe see more emphasis on what things look and feel like in the online. I think that's important too.
Wow, that's a lot, because a couple of things that come to mind is production.
Yes.
Like is the classroom going to need to look and feel like production? Like are you going to need to have IT support on the ready? Like because you need someone to, show this visual, and so almost like the classroom experience looks like you're watching either a well-produced YouTube video or a well-produced live news show where like these are you're running clips, and but when that is happening, that's like some of that is post-production, but you're live. Right. So it's like you're treating your online learning classroom like it is a live news show.
Production, yes.
breaking news. Like
this is macroeconomics.
Yeah,
exactly.
We're gonna turn into Janet Yellen is about
right.
Is that her first name, Janet?
Well, it becomes more. I think maybe it, and I think that's not a bad thing. Like it becomes to some degree a little bit like edutainment, where I'm getting educated, but there's an element of it that feels entertaining to me. And especially that's important too when it comes to student retention and progression. Like places that you genuinely feel connected to, feel that you're benefiting by, and feel fun. Like who's not going to want to continue to have those experiences? But if it doesn't feel relevant, it doesn't feel it's flat in terms of visually. It makes then you really have to will yourself to do it. That's why that Angela Duckworth's discussion around grit. Like then it takes a lot more grit. But if you can remove some of the friction of the boredom that sometimes can creep in when we don't take the time to really like, how can I give my students and not just an exceptional experience in terms of the content, in terms of the quality and the instructor, but also in terms of what they're actually experiencing online. How can I pour into them in that way?
Right.
Like that, there's a reason why people binge watch Netflix movies, right? Because they're well produced. The storylines for some of these movies and series is amazing. And there is an element of cliffhanger. And so you're like, oh, I'm only going to watch one episode. But then next thing you know, 10 hours has gone by. Wait, what happened? So imagine if we can do that in some ways in the way that we deliver high quality education, where we can create cliffhangers, where the students are not like, oh, I have to go to class tonight. If students, I get to go to class tonight. What would that world look like? What would have to happen? You know what I'm saying? And so I think
it's not only is that well produced, but man, it also says something about the recruitment of the staff.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because I think that a lot of times, if somebody wants to become a teacher, sometimes their teaching skills are not that great.
Mm-hmm.
And you can want to do something, and that doesn't automatically translate into you being able to do it well.
Yes.
And so the future may, look like how well can you produce
a
classroom,
yes.
a classroom learning environment. How well, how well can you produce that?
Right. Because essentially at that point, it's you're curating an experience, you're curating a learning experience. And that's not just the content. That is what does it look and feel like? What am I walking away with academically? But how do I feel when I leave this learning experience?
Right.
And does it make me want to come back to it?
Right. Because what can at some point what could happen? Like I know we're talking about this is a segment we could title "What If in the Future." So, if someone can attain all of the knowledge that they would get from traditional college, but they can get it on YouTube. Like I understand that college gives you an aggregated experience and you get a degree at the end. But if people don't want to go anymore, then you're not going to have students except for those entering fields that require the degree. Like your medical profession, like you have to be licensed, like your attorneys, your accountants. But once you have hit all of those career fields that require this degree, and what's left is fields that people can skill their way into it.
They can skill themselves.
They've established their own social media platform, and they can influence their way into a particular field. So here's a way that you can utilize perhaps your journalism department to help partner with instructors producing an educational experience live.
Right.
Like you're just going to have to like really pull in and integrate what is, it's like, what if the entire institution was an integrative one where you are using your journalism department to produce this, you are using your, so
100%. And the thing is, I think as we so we're talking about future state, like I think as we go for students are they're going to expect it. Like, I mean, you're paying, like with the cost of education, like they are starting to look at what am I getting? Yes, I'm getting this knowledge, but like what else? I remember a friend of mine, she went to USC. This is funny to me. She went to USC And, USD is not inexpensive. And so when she got there on the first day of school, she thought when she walked into her lecture hall that it was going to be like all leather, beautiful leather seats, and like a movie theater. And so imagine her surprise when that was not the experience at all. And so she's going, wait, where's all the like, because it's definitely not in this lecture hall. And so I think that, like, as the cost of education goes up, you got to show something for it. And I think this is one way that you can do that, is really creating, like I said, you're curating educational experiences versus taking what I could do in the classroom and just throwing it into a Zoom and calling that good. I don't think for the future, I don't think that's going to be enough.
Yeah. Wow, that's so good. Well, as we come to a close, I really enjoyed this conversation.
Likewise.
As we
say this real quick before you wrap us up, like, I want to say how much I appreciate you bringing these topics to the forefront, because I think like when it comes to like academic survival and what that means for whether you're a first year student or an adult student who's returning after 20 years, there is a feeling of, it's a high stakes game, right? Like it's like, I'm going into this new environment and I'm hopeful that I'll be successful, but I don't know for sure. And so you bringing up these topics of what, like, not only professionals that work in this space to support students, but like bringing in actual students and what they've gone through, that is so needed, because I think it tells the full story of what's going on in the learning space in general, whether that's higher ed or whether that's an upskilling program. It gives full color to what we as professionals need to know, and need to be considerate of. And so thank you for providing this type of platform where like folks like myself and students can come share what we think, and then students come say, no, that's not how we're thinking. Go back to the drawing board. So thank you for the opportunity to just share.
Oh yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that compliment. I appreciate it. I do think that this particular episode is interesting because in talking about academic survival, I feel that we touched on something that I don't normally touch on, and that is like, how is the institution going to survive?
Yeah.
Because there's some changes that, they're going to have to continue to stay relevant.
Yeah, it takes academic survival to a different slant on it. It's not just about the students, but like the institution needs to be flexible and adaptable to what's happening in this space, and really taking the time, I think, to partner with the, the business. What does the market need? What is it asking for? And really having more close ties to it, because the days of education for education's sake, that most folks don't have. They don't have that luxury. They don't have that luxury.
The time or the money to just like, I need to be well educated.
Exactly. That's another thing that I can't remember her name. So if she ever hears this, I would cite you. I just don't remember her name. But she said students need the skills to pay the bills. Right. And that's true. That's what's necessary. And so the more that institutions can create a pathway and a direct line and a ecosystem around that, I think the better we are able to serve our students, and the better able we are to really make good, like I said at the beginning, to make good on what our students came for, which is not just the degree, but it's that pathway into that career field that's going to allow them to have the forward trajectory to be able to take care of themselves, their families, and influence their communities. That's what this is about.
Okay. Oh, this is great. Wow, this fantastic information, Amber. What is I'm going to close out with this.
Yeah.
What is on the horizon for Dr. Amber Artiaga? What does that look like?
It's such a Great question. And I talk about this a lot with students of like, you got to be future focused and what's on the pathway for you for the future. I think for me, it is around what we talked about a little bit earlier is really educating myself on what's available from an AI perspective, what's available. And that's a hard thing to do because, like I said, it does come out like literally, it seems like every hour. But and thinking through how can we better serve our students using this, not burn out our staff members, because in the work that we do, it's very, it can be draining because you're counseling, you're advising, you're encouraging, and so you need to have your own tank full, so to speak, as a coach or as an advisor to be able to pour into someone else, right? So how can we resource those folks in a way that allows them to maintain a high degree of just emotional security in their own space so that they can give that out. And so I think for me, it's around it. Like I said, educating myself a little bit more on how we can use this in a way that's going to be meaningful to the staff and to students. I don't know. I think that's that alone is quite the undertaking.
Okay.
So yeah, I think, and then just like having conversations like these, like this is, this is really, it's really impactful for me to be able to, sometimes you're thinking things, but sometimes sharing them out loud and bouncing them off other people and getting that insight. It takes that deep thought to another level. And so I think having more conversations like this, getting the right folks in the room, like maybe being part of that to be able to understand what this new future of education is going to look like, and how we can make sure that we're doing it in a way and we're resourcing students in a way that's meaningful to them, short-term and long-term, and it's relevant to the world that they're going to be stepping into. So
yes.
Yeah.
Well, to a relevant future.
Yes. Relevant
Cheers
future.
to a relevant future.
Cheers. Yes.
Well, Dr. Amber Artiaga, it was such a pleasure to have you. We had a good conversation about AI and what things are going to look like. Man, I'm excited. I'm excited.
Likewise. It's a brand new day, as they say. It's a brand new day.
All righty. Well, if the opportunity arises, we will see you again.
Yes, I'd love it. I'd welcome it.
All right. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you too.
That's it for today on academic survival. If you want to share your story on how you survived your freshman year of college, you can reach me at info@chandralmcdonald.com. We'll be back next week with more ways to survive your academic journey. Until then, happy studying.